So I would like to introduce Professor Albert Farrugia, traveling from a long distance from the southern hemisphere. I've proudly learned that he's a professor in the Department of Surgery, which is quite nice. He is here on behalf of one of our partners, Kedrion, as a senior scientific advisor. Please, Professor.
Does this work? How do I make it? Works? Okay, well, I have a presentation which perhaps can be put on the relevant screens. And in the meantime, I just want to say that this is my first visit to Romania, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to visit the city and to tick Romania on my list of countries where I have been and which I hopefully will be again. Now, this morning, I have to say that I was feeling extremely uncertain as to how to progress this intervention on my part, because I'm here to speak in relation to a very particular and very different and much smaller part of the pharmaceutical industry than the representatives of very big companies such as Roche and so on, which have spoken already. But I find that many of the topics which keep coming up, even just now and throughout the intervention so far, are actually very resonant with many of the points which I shall make as exemplified by this small but quite important industry. So, what do I do this? How do I advance the slides? Perhaps. How do I advance these slides?
Left, right.
This one?
Left, right.
The other one.
The other one?
Yes.
Left, right.
Now I can. Okay.
It's working.
Okay. So I'm going to be making some points in relation to the plasma therapeutics industry. The plasma therapeutics industry, first of all, serves a number of what I now can add to my lexicon of non-infectious chronic disorders. Very rare diseases, most of them congenital, inherited, that is, which involve the deficiency of one or other of the many proteins which are found in our blood, in the liquid portion of our blood, human plasma. And the plasma industry basically collects plasma and then through an industrial process purifies these proteins into therapeutic products. I'll be focusing especially on one part of this patient community, but first I'll give you some information about this industry. And I'm very happy to have heard the interventions both this morning in relation to a possible Romanian National Blood Bank and from the representative of the patients here, because I shall make some allusions to Romania. This slide, which you can see over here, shows one particular feature of the important economics of the plasma industry, which is that in contrast to mainstream pharmaceuticals, plasma therapies are extremely dependent on their cost structure on plasma itself. The very major component, up to 1/2 of the cost of making these treatments, is actually the plasma, which has to be procured through very complex systems related to collection and to safety in particular, and then manufactured, as I said, through complex industrial processes. But this is very, very different. In other words, the major cost of the plasma industry is the raw material itself. In some ways, it is like the oil industry, because the oil is the raw material for a number of products, and the plasma is the raw material for a number of therapeutic products. Now, one of the issues which has been raised in this conference, and especially in relation to Romania, which, as I can gather from this meeting, is a challenged healthcare environment, is the issue of sustainability. In relation to the derivatives, to the important medicines which come from plasma, the best way to address sustainability for this country and every other country is to attempt to attain as much as possible a level of strategic independence from the global commercial market. I emphasize this. This is what we call in Italy, autosufficienza, but it basically means that as much as possible for these extremely important medicines, given that they are derived from a raw material present in any community, that as much as possible a community should attempt to attain strategic independence for these products. Why? Because at the moment, the commercial plasma sector, which, as the learned chairman has told you, I in fact represent, the commercial plasma sector is extremely dependent on plasma procured from the United States of America. Extremely and, ladies and gentlemen, excessively dependent. 1 million, just 1 million, roughly 1 million plasma donors from the United States supply more than 2/3 of the global supply of plasma derivatives. This is a situation which preoccupies us considerably, and this is one of the main reasons why strategic independence for you as a country and for every country involved in procuring plasma products is of considerable importance. We have to remember that plasma comes from blood. There are two ways to procure plasma. I have listened with great interest and some concern to the comments made by my friend earlier that Romania has a very low level of blood donations. One of the first things which has to happen for the Romanian healthcare system is to increase this, not just in relation to plasma derivatives, which, if you like, are at the end of a long queue of priorities, but in relation to blood for usage in hospitals. But once you collect blood, plasma can be taken out. In fact, it is better to transfuse the blood as red cells, and the plasma can be fractionated. This maximizes the gift of the blood donor. It is very important to realize that here we have a very important ethical principle, because by maximizing this gift through the usage of medicines of various types from one donation of plasma, we can, in fact, reach the intention of the blood donors much better. The other way of getting plasmapheresis, which is more expensive but much more efficient, is actually to collect plasma itself by what's called plasmapheresis. This involves high-level technological equipment and disposables, which are expensive, but which in the end are worth it because you get much bigger volumes of plasma. Next slide. Okay. Why can't I get? All right. Now, a colleague in the company, Kedrion, has given me some data in relation to Romania, and if this is inaccurate, feel free to criticize me, although I don't exactly feel responsibility. But I have attempted, myself and my colleague on this slide, to convey some calculations. It is our information that at the moment in Romania, something like 30,000 liters of plasma are actually generated by your national blood system. For a population of 20 million, which I understand is roughly the population of Romania, this is actually quite low. It can result in the generation, if you have the capacity to manufacture, or if somebody manufactures for you, which happens quite frequently, of these therapeutic products which are used for the various classes of patients. I shall be specifying mostly the immunoglobulin product, because this is the most important for the industry and also very important for patients. But there are the very important disorders such as hemophilia and other bleeding disorders, as well as albumin for the treatment of injury, which can also be extracted from this plasma. The point I seek to make from this calculation, again with the caveat that I would hope that it is correct, is that with this amount of plasma, there is a great need to increase it, because there is way below what is needed for mainstream clinical practice in your health system. I'm given to understand that the Romanian Health Ministry, for example, for immunoglobulin, has targeted 1,000 kilograms for the country. This, in fact, gives you something like 50 grams per 1,000 population, which is a reasonable amount compared to the rest of the European Union. It is, in our opinion, as physicians, nowhere near enough, but it is also quite reasonable in terms of attaining the patients in highest need. But at the moment, you certainly need more than this. So I reiterate that your first priority is to improve and increase the scope of your blood system. And in terms of the amount of plasma that you need, which I would estimate is about 250,000 rather than 30,000 liters, you need to attain this through various guidelines in relation to how many donors you get through plasmapheresis. You can pick whichever guideline you like. Some of the guidelines are more orientated to European environments. I have heard mentioned the fact that some donors in this country are remunerated. This is an issue which is controversial. In my view, it is very important to get the plasma, and as long as the plasma is safe, it doesn't matter how it's obtained, because the final aim is patient care. But I reiterate that this is something which you need to focus on in order to get sustainable strategic independence from the global market, which can result in problems. But in the meantime, we are dependent on the global market. Now I'm going to focus on the most important plasma product in terms of the economics of the industry, the product which derives the industry most of its actual revenue, which is immune globulin. And our primary target for immune globulin is really patients who are deficient, who are born without this product through primary immune deficiency. This is a disease in which the body's capacity to make what are called antibodies, which are the entities which allow you to gain resistance from infectious illness, is missing. It's a number of congenital disorders, and amongst the worst manifestation of this disease is damage to the lungs. Unless treated and treated early, this is a cartonic representation of the clinical consequences. Unless treated and treated early, patients with this disease will develop chronic bronchostasis, which means that their lungs are permanently damaged, and they will have, as a result of this, increased mortality, increased morbidity. And as the patients grow older, again, unless treated, they will become much more susceptible to cancers, because the body's capacity to fight cancer through immunoglobulin is decreased. Ever since the development of immunoglobulin as preparations by plasma industry, this has improved enormously in terms of the survival as well as the quality of life of these patients. The survival, which is shown on for you, the left part of this slide, has increased enormously looking over the years in 3 separate surveys, separated by 30 years or so in terms of the amount of immunoglobulin available. The survival in one of these diseases of primary immune deficiency has increased enormously, as well as has the number of infections affected by these patients. If anybody wants these slides, incidentally, they can ask me for them. Nothing here is not public information. Now, a lot has been said about economics, and obviously for challenged healthcare systems, it is very important to maximize the value of a treatment, even for a rare disorder such as primary immune deficiency, because the honest reality is that because of the economic factors I have told you already, these are extremely expensive diseases. There's no question about it. The cost of the plasma and the rarity of the patients combine to make the economic situation extremely arduous. And nowadays we know that cost effectiveness through health technology assessment is a very important kind of metric to look at. As time has gone by, and this is again related to something which has kept coming up in this conference, the question of personalizing treatment. We have had various phases, this subject which interests me greatly, various phases of medical treatment parameters or paradigms throughout history. And at the moment we are approaching, very encouragingly, the phase of personalizing treatment to particular patient features. This has become, if you like, the latest sexy concept in relation to delivering healthcare. It is certainly extremely important. It's also important to realize that this can result in healthcare benefits, and there are healthcare consequences. But if I can just, I'll skip that slide and I'll just look at this slide. I'm sorry that this is a technical slide, but this is showing the results of applying a personalized medicine protocol for patients with primary immune deficiency, in which the patient group was split into two. In one, a personalized medicine protocol was applied. I will not get into the details of this protocol, it is extremely technical. And in another group, the mainstream protocol driven by current practice was applied. And the point which is important to make from these results is that by personalizing the treatment, two things happened. First of all, the patient outcomes were improved. Secondly, the economics was also improved because the amount of immune globulin through personalizing the treatment could be decreased. So the message to your healthcare providers is that if they do practice personalized medicine, they will practice better medicine and better economic medicine, even in this fairly esoteric field of plasma therapies. Another issue which, in fact, is embedded, if you like, in the title of this conference and in the Aspen mission is the question of quality of life. And since the reimbursement agencies are extremely interested in the patient quality of life in terms of treatment these days, it is very important to assess properly quality of life. Commercial companies commission their own studies, and they generally turn out to be in such a way as to advantage the commercial company in question. It's very important for agencies involved in reimbursement to understand directly what benefits the patients and not what benefits the company. And in relation to this particular aspect, I have summarized this on this slide. Perhaps I don't have enough time to get into this in great detail. I want to round off by making you aware of another very crucial immune globulin. I have spoken to you mostly in relation to a disease which causes morbidity, which causes great illness, primary immune deficiency. But there's another immune globulin which is very important in terms of preventing illness and giving us healthy mothers and babies. And this is Rh immune globulin, which is given prophylactically to women who are rhesus negative before and just after the birth in order to ensure that the lady and her offspring are protected from a very serious disease, Rh disease. So this is a great success story, and this year my company and other companies celebrated 50 years since the first usage of this extremely important immune globulin. So I just want to round off by, I suppose, giving an advertisement for my company in terms of what we do for these patients. We are a small company, but we provide an app for them monitoring their treatment. It's very important, self-monitoring of treatment, and also a guide for their best usage. I thank you very much for your patience and for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor. We actually answered to many of our questions. Mr. Radu Gănescu's question partly, and some of the issues that have been raised in the latter months, I guess, in this country. On one hand. On the other hand, it's a second example of how personalized medicine can diminish costs, which should be taken into consideration. Thank you. If there are any questions,